So for the circle, you're just going to paint the color straight up. So craftsmanship does count. I'm going to try to stay in the lines. And so if I'm making orange, I would make a blob of yellow off to the side, and then a tiny bit of red, and I'd make my orange first, although that's really dark orange, so I'd add a little bit more yellow. So for the primary colors, you're going to have to make the color first. I recommend doing those the next day, like on Monday, because those are going to take a while. So whenever you clean out your brush, we don't want a lot of water on your brush. So I'm going to just pull this off to the side. You're going to wipe your brush on the newspaper before you dip it into the paint. If you just add water to the acrylic paint, you're essentially making watercolor, which you can make watercolor with acrylic paint, but that's not really what we're doing for this project. Okay, so for your tint, I'm going to take a little blob of white, a tiny little piece of yellow, and I'm going to make a really light version of yellow, like a pastel color. I'm going to mix it pretty good. And then instead of trying to paint with like the tip of the brush like you would hold a pencil, instead you're going to glide the side of the brush along your edges. So that's my best advice for craftsmanship, is to outline and then fill in. Yeah. All right, so then yellow's complement is, what's on the opposite side of the color wheel from yellow? Purple or violet. All right, so I have to make that. So I'm going to start with red because it's a little bit lighter than blue. I'm going to do a little bit more than that. A little bit of blue. And then for the violet or purple, you do need to add a tiny touch of white just because then it makes like a really dark purple. Okay, so that's still a little bit reddish. So I'm going to add a little bit of blue and a tiny bit of white. Okay, that's a pretty good purple. Or violet. If it looks reddish, add blue. Looks bluish, add red. Okay. So then you can do your tone and shade out of the same puddle of paint. So I'm going to grab my yellow. I'm going to add a tiny, tiny touch of the violet, and it will slightly darken my yellow, but it should still be yellowy. So this is a tone of yellow. So with that same puddle of paint, I'm going to add just a tiny bit more of the color's complement. And then if you get brown, you've gone too far. So let me add a little bit more yellow. So for any of them, when you mix the two complements together, like in equal parts, you're going to get brown, some version of brown. So you would go back and add more of the original color. So for a shade of yellow, you should get like a mustardy, kind of poopy color. And so if you're like, ooh, I don't like that color. Okay, then we know that in your painting, you're not going to use a shade of yellow. Like that's not going to be one of your colors. You would maybe use a tint of yellow or a tone of yellow, but it's not going to be your shade. All right, so again, the circle is the original color. The top is the tint, left side tone, right side shade. Use the same puddle for tone and shade. And if you get brown, add more of the original color. Okay, you guys. Let me stop.